Hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. And this lecture is going to be a lab and we are going to be configuring a Cognito user pool, and we're going to take a look at the built-in sign up and sign in functionality provided by Cognito, which allows you to manage your users who need to sign into your web applications and your mobile applications. So if you've got time, please join me in the AWS console. So here I am in the AWS console, and you'll find Cognito under Security, Identity and Compliance. So just click on Cognito, click on Manage User Pools and create a user pool. So the first thing we need to do is give it a name, and I'm just going to call it Test Pool. Click on Review Defaults, and we can just keep to all of the defaults that you see here. And there's various things that you can change and you can configure for yourself, things like the password length, the policy. You can enable multi-factor authentication, but we're going to stick with all the defaults, and I'm going to go ahead and click Create Pool. So that has been created successfully. And I'm just going to scroll down to App Clients and click on Add App Client. And the app client is what we use to call the various APIs on our behalf. For example, the API to register a new user or to sign in a user. So click on Add App Client, and we need to give it a name. I'm just going to call it My Test Client. And once again, just stick to the default. So you should have Generate Client Secret selected. So just click on Create App Client. And now we need to configure the app client. So just click on App Client Settings, and we need to enable an identity provider for our application client. So just select Cognito User Pool. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to configure callback URLs. And a callback URL is just going to be the URL that your users are going to be redirected to after they have successfully signed in or signed up. Just for this demo, we're going to use https:/example.com. So it's just going to be a dummy website. But in reality, if you have your own web application, you could use whichever website you want your users to land on once they have signed into the application. We don't need to configure a sign out URL, so I'm just going to leave that blank for now. And then under the OAuth 2 section, I'm going to select the first two options. So authorization code grant. So that is going to configure Cognito to give you back an authorization code, which you can provide back to your backend authorization process. And the implicit grant, that just gives you the JWT token. So that means when we go to test the configuration, we'll be able to view that JWT token. And under allowed OAuth scopes, I'm just going to select everything. So the phone and email, that is just for user verification. So when you first sign up, they'll send you an email just to get you to verify your email is correct. And then I'm going to select these three as well. And if you're not familiar with OAuth, it is simply an open standard authentication framework. And by selecting all of these OAuth scopes, this is just going to grant access to the Cognito API. So all of the API operations like the sign in and sign up. And also it's going to give us access to the JWT token that Cognito will return. But you can learn more about the OAuth flows and scopes if you click on this link here. Just open it up in a new tab, and it just takes you straight to the Cognito documentation. So you can read all about that at your leisure, but it is out of scope for the exam. You do not need to learn it for the exam. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Save Changes. Then head over to Domain Name, and we need to create a domain prefix for our Amazon Cognito domain, and you can just make one up. I'm just going to call it ACG test. Click on check availability, and if it's available, then we can go ahead and save changes. And this just applies this domain prefix to the Cognito domain that it's creating for you. And then the last thing I'm going to do is UI customization. So you can customize Cognito or the look and feel of the sign in and sign up page as you want. So you can add a logo, you can customize the labels, the input fields, text descriptions, banners, etc., etc. So I'm just going to add a logo to our sign up page. I'm just going to add the Cloud Guru logo, select that file, keep everything else as the default, and click Save. So now we have configured everything we need for Cognito. So Cognito is going to create a built-in sign up and sign in page based on our configuration. So let's test it and see if it's working. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to App Integration, grab my Cognito domain name, copy that, come to a new tab and just paste that. But we need to add a few additional parameters as well in order to test this properly. So I'm just going to type in /login ? And then response _type equals token, because we want it to respond with a token. Then ampersand and client _ID equals. I'm going to come back to Cognito and go to my app client settings, grab my client ID. And don't worry, there's quite a lot to type into the browser here, but that will all be provided in the resources section of the course. So the next thing we need to do is ampersand and redirect _URI equals. And I'm just going to copy and paste it from my client settings to make sure I spell it exactly the same. You want to make sure this is really the same, because if you accidentally type it differently, it's not going to work. And then I'm going to hit enter. And if that's worked correctly for you, this is what you should see. And this is the sign up and sign in page that Cognito has created for us. And it's all completely built in. We don't have to write any of the code for this. It's just all based on the options that we configured within our user pool and when we set up our app client. So we don't have any users yet in our user pool. So we need to create a new user. So I'm just going to create a new account. I'm going to call it Faye, add my email address in, create a password, and you'll see it's making sure that we adhere to the password policy, then hit sign up. And because we selected to send a verification code by email, so it's going to send a verification code to the email address that I've used to sign up with. So I'm just going to go and check my email now. And there's my email with my verification codes. Just going to copy that, come back to my sign in page, paste in the verification code and click confirm account. So there we are, we've signed in and it's taken me to the test domain, the example domain. And if you look at the top of your browser, you'll see the ID token, so the JWT token that Cognito has generated for you. Now, if we go back to our user pools, go into users and groups, hit refresh, you should see the user that we've just created. And within Cognito, you can also set up groups as well. So you can go in, you can create a group, and you can also select an identity access management role as well. So for example, you could select a role to give access to S3, create that group, and then you can actually add users in. So you can add your Cognito users into that group. So you can actually build out groups of users within your Cognito directory, and you can assign them an identity access management role associated with a specific Cognito group. So these roles can then be used to access AWS services like files in S3, DynamoDB tables, that kind of thing. And if we move down to Federation and click on Identity Providers, you'll find the different identity providers that Cognito can federate with on your behalf as well. So you've got Facebook, Google, Amazon, SAML, which refers to any SAML compliant directory. So it could be Active Directory, for example, and also OpenID. And configuring all of this is really beyond the scope of the exam. The main thing you really need to know is what is Cognito at a high level. So just remember, it allows you to manage user identity for your mobile and web applications. It integrates with Facebook, Google, Amazon, and other identity providers. And it is the recommended approach for user sign up and sign in for mobile applications. So that is the end of this lab. If you would like to delete all of your Cognito setup, the first thing you need to do is delete your domain. So just go ahead and delete the domain. And then once you've done that, it will allow you to go to general settings, and then you can delete your pool as well. So that's the end of this lecture. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture. Thank you.